have one commission member that is listening in. Actually, we have two commission members that are listening in on our radio, and that is Mayor McDonald and Kenya Bradshaw. So at this point, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Transition Planning Commission. And if we could just pause for a moment of reflection and ask for the discernment and the guidance that we all so greatly need. Thank you very much. You have the minutes before you. They were sent to you ahead of time. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask if there were any corrections. Are there? All right, hearing none and having the aye vote, then the minutes stand approved. My report tonight is very minimal. We're very pleased to have Dr. Cash with us to do a presentation that will enlighten us on the direction and the reform efforts that are going on in the Memphis City School System, and he's being accompanied tonight also and partnered by the Bill and Melinda Gates team that is working here on the ground with the Memphis City School staff on the TEI. And so they actually have all of the agenda. We do have just one very brief report. Dr. Fred Johnson, could you give us a brief word about the status of the RFP responses?
Yes, Dr. Prescott. We are still in the process. We had planned to be finished by now, but we aren't. We conducted, one session yesterday. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the second session, and we hope to get that done early this week, next week rather, and we will report to you as quickly as we complete the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I would like to recognize in the audience we have our Shelby County School Board Chair, Mr. Billy Orgel. Where are you, Billy? And we also have some commissioners. I see Commissioner Malott. Who else is here? And Commissioner Williams. Glad to have you. And we also, again, are pleased to have join us Mayor Sharon Goldsworthy from Germantown. Thank you for being here. Okay, at this point then, I'm actually going to scoot over Dr. Cash to this other spot. It's time already, I told you. I told him I'd be through in a few minutes because I've tried to squeeze him on this report. But I am pleased to introduce Dr. Kreiner Cash. And as you know, earlier we had a very brief presentation from Dr. Hamer, and Dr. Cash was out, so we're pleased to have him with us tonight. And what I'll do, Dr. Cash, is just let you introduce your team, and I'm going to hand this microphone to you and move over.
Thank you, Chairman Prescott. Good evening, members of the Transition Planning Committee and the board from Shelby County Unified Board, and from the staff that are here. Welcome and good evening. This evening promises to be one of the most thrilling presentations that you've ever heard. So I can see from your faces that you're ready and raring to go. I can also see from my staff that they are still cold, so they have their coats on, and hopefully you'll warm up to the occasion soon. I do have my staff back here with me. Many of them are cabinet members. I won't introduce all of them, but they are here in support tonight of the substance of the presentation. As board members come in, I'll try to acknowledge them for your consideration. I see that Commissioner Martavius Jones, for example, has just come in, and I see Mayor Luttrell walking back, who also is here with us this evening. I want to suggest to you that you have materials that you can read at your leisure and I encourage you to do so in a packet that we have thoughtfully put together for you. This presentation tonight will cover just about 1 hour, and it represents 3 years of intensive, systematic, relentless work on the mission at hand. So I hope that you will find it helpful. Tonight, there will be 4 parts to the presentation. I will start with a context and have 5 to 7 slides of context for you so that you can see the demographics and some of the academic challenges that both systems will be needing to address as we merge going forward. Any data that we present tonight is designed to help you with your specific charge as ordered by Judge Mays. The second part will be an analysis, how we go about analyzing the current conditions that the student populations that we serve are facing and that must be addressed in order for that population to achieve the high standards that we all have for our children in this community. That analysis will take 5 to 7 minutes. Then we go into the main part of the presentation, about 40 minutes, and that will be the epicenter of our reform work here, and that's the teacher effectiveness initiative work. We believe that unless we improve considerably the human capital that is charged with guiding and leading the development of our young people every day, we can't reach any goal that might be set outside of that context. And then last, we'll begin to, as we will sprinkle throughout the presentation, talk about the results that particular strategy and the other strategies that comprise the Cradle to Career Memphis City Schools reform agenda at this time, the results that they're beginning to yield. Now, this is one approach that we've taken as a board together over these last 3 years, and that this administration, with its cumulative experience, has decided to take as a process of trying to improve education in this community. You don't have to take that process by any means, but we do suggest quite seriously and intentionally that you will, however you decide to approach it, have to look at the same issues, have to look at and define and decide what the fault lines are going to be facing our young people so that they don't become fishers going forward. This is the crux of the matter. Now, before I get started, my good colleague from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Josh Edelman, who is here as the senior program coordinator for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, needs to make a few remarks at the top of the presentation. He's going to share his observations and views from the foundation because he does have to catch a plane at 7:05. The plane leaves. It is Delta, so it may not leave. But nonetheless, we're going to assume it leaves, and he's got to leave now. He thinks he can make it if he stays, but he cannot make it if he stays. So we're going to let Josh start us with 10 minutes of observation or whatever he needs. And please give Josh Edelman from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation your warmest applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cash, to Transition Planning Commission members, various mayors that are here, members of the school board, Consolidated School Board. Very excited to be invited to present today. I have not had that experience with Delta yet. I don't appreciate that bad karma. I'm very hopeful of an on-time arrival, an on-time departure, and an early arrival back in D.C. But we did bring the rental car back, and so I will be able to stay longer because I want to hear the presentation. Very excited to be here, and want to start by saying, and I'll say at the end as well, we are very, very excited about this consolidation. We see Teacher Effectiveness Initiative being great for Memphis kids, being great for Shelby County kids, being great for Pittsburgh kids, Tampa kids, Denver kids, Atlanta kids, Los Angeles kids, Prince George's County kids, Tulsa kids. And this is something that is very much a priority for us because we've always had a desire to see the work regionalize and scale. And so Memphis actually is ahead of the curve because of the fact that we're going to be the first proof point of scaling the work. Shelby County is an example of taking the work to a scale that we have not done before. So the first and most important message is that we are committed to this consolidation, And as long as the leadership of bodies like this, of districts like Memphis and Shelby County are committed to working with us, Vicki Phillips and Irvin Scott, Mike Copeland, our team members, our leaders are committed to this work. We're very excited about seeing it go forward and serve more kids over time, more teachers, more families, more communities. So I want to start with that. 2 weeks ago we were here and we asked a lot from Dr. Cash and his team. We spent 9 hours over 2 days, which for folks that are doing district work is a lot of time to ask, given the kids and what their needs are, to talk about a lot of things. A lot of time was spent on budget and financial sustainability. You guys have read a bit about that in the papers a bit. The truth of the matter is they have done a tremendous amount of good work digging in to think very deeply about the topics at hand around sustaining this work. And they are leading the charge as far as our 8 sites. We really are learning a lot from Memphis as far as them having the right conversations on the right topics. They have not figured it all out yet. Nobody has. But they are talking about the exact right tough topics. We're very proud of them. We're very excited about supporting them going forward when it comes to sustaining the work for the next 5 years, the grant, and beyond. So that's definitely a point of observation that we think is a real plus, a real asset to the work. Beyond that conversation about budget, we spent 6 hours on what's called a stock take. So the budget was 3 hours, stock take was 6 hours, where we sat back. Twice a year we get together with leadership from the district, leadership from the union, board representation, and then Gates members to kind of talk about how things are going. And from that conversation, clearly there's a lot going well. And we were very, very excited about the presentation that was presented. And the rollout of the teacher effectiveness measure is a very significant point to us because it speaks to the thoughtfulness of the district to get an alternative and robust measure passed by the state and to put in place what will be one part of a multiple measure of effectiveness of teaching. It has been portrayed perhaps by some as being about teaching being measured purely by test scores. That's only a piece of this. The TEM is so important because it's about 4 things. It's about value add and growth, but it's also about what's seen through observation, what's seen by what students are saying about their teachers, and what's seen by teacher knowledge tests. So we're very impressed by that. We're also very excited about what happened this year when it comes to rolling out a higher number of high potential candidates ready to work with our kids before school started. Major strides were made on that, and Dr. Cash can give you much more specific numbers in his presentation. But that speaks to the recruitment and selection and sourcing side being where it needs to be, which is a huge part of the second strategy of our work. We're also very excited, as I mentioned, about the financial sustainability work they're digging in on. Very excited about the work going on in schools with kids. The Student Envoy program, which will also be touched on, talks about empowering our students in Memphis City schools to be the kind of leaders to shape the culture and climate of our schools, to be ones that are driving towards college. So there's several different proof points going on that we think are clear examples of Memphis being on track for the work. There's also, as we've all seen, a very powerful public version of this work in the I Teach I Am campaign. We had our communications summit a couple weeks ago in New York, bringing all 8 sites together. It was one of the real shining points of the conversation was to look at teachers being highlighted and recognized for their good work. Definitely a high point of the work so far. So these are definitely things we're looking to that give us great excitement and optimism as to the work. There's a lot more work to do. What I was also proud of is at the end of the meeting we spent a lot of time talking about the next 6 months. There's a lot of things that have to be dug in on, a lot of good work to be done. Principal effectiveness and focusing on figuring out the right range of tasks to allow principals to be instructional leaders, to allow them to really focus on the observation framework. 32,000 observations are going to be done this year in schools across Memphis City schools. To do that will mean that principals, assistant principals have to be at their best. So that's a key area of focus these next 6 months. People have focused on TEI being about accountability only. TEI is about support, first and foremost, for our teachers. It's about using data to figure out how do we go about providing the professional development they need to take their work to the next level. And there's some very powerful information that's going to be shared in this presentation about the number of teachers who have moved forward in the last year as far as their value-added scores. We're very excited about seeing this next 6 months being an area where professional development is going to push teachers to the next level. It's a key area of focus, without a doubt. More teacher ownership is going to be a very important thing for us to see as well, making sure that we're including teachers in the conversation every step of the way, listening to their voices, helping them understand the roles they can continue to play to be at their best for our kids. We're also very excited to focus on strategic communication. That's going to be an area of focus for the district to really find ways for different constituents to understand the work in terms that make sense to them. When I stop for a second on this point, because people talk about sharing data and charts, it's about breaking it down in ways that different constituents understand it in ways that make sense for them. It's about digestible talking points. It's about saying this is going to help me get to college. It's about a parent talking about how this is going to help me connect my kids to future success. So they have to do a lot of work these next 6 months in figuring out how do you break down TEI into something that's sensible for different constituents. Lastly, the financial sustainability is going to be a key area of focus the next 6 months and beyond. So we left the meeting feeling great about was that they are cognizant of the challenges. They're going to work very hard on them. And our job going forward is to be that support figure that will be offering examples from around the country from our work that's going on to help them in this effort, and also hold them accountable for the milestones that we expect to be seen to keep the work on track. So to wrap up, because I am cognizant of time, and I want to make sure Dr. Cash has a chance to present the presentation, which is going to be really good today, is to really reinforce the commitment that we have. We'll be here and accessible to you. I will be here most weeks on the ground to do whatever is necessary to demonstrate our commitment to you and to support you guys in the work. Having been in D.C., been in Chicago, been in the Bay Area, been in Boston, done work for the last 20 years, I have not seen an urban center, suburban center working together in this way. The number of people in the room that there are today on the consolidated board, all committed to kids. Really have not seen that. We're talking about large urban centers around the country that oftentimes are in the center of the ed reform conversation. Well, I'll tell you guys that Memphis is now in the center of the ed reform conversation. Honestly, 9 months ago, I had not heard a thing about the Memphis city schools when I was in D.C. I've heard more in the last 6 months about Memphis and Shelby County than what I've heard in the last 20 years. The eyes of the country are on Memphis right now, and they're on Shelby County. Every jurisdiction is dealing with an issue of figuring out ways to move the needle when it comes to student achievement for less dollars. It's a big challenge. And figuring out how to do this efficiently and effectively on behalf of our kids is going to send a message to the nation that it can be done, and it started here. So Gates is incredibly excited about supporting you in this effort. We have great faith. It'll be an effort that's going to be one that will be a great success, and I'm very excited about being a part of that going forward. Appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has not only supported this district and this work with their considerable dollars and economic power, $92 million, as most of you know, but they have been an extraordinarily helpful, critical friend on the ground, helping us with every aspect of this work, providing their considerable international resources when it comes to communication strategies and when it comes to networking with what best practices are emerging around this work. So, again, thank you to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we're really excited to have Josh Edelman on the ground with us as our new community liaison. Thank you, Josh. Best with that flight. All right, I'm going to stand and suggest to you that in this packet you have organized right flap, left flap, some materials that complement the presentation. You have a bio summary of the superintendent from Memphis City Schools, which I think is helpful. Not everyone is aware of the overall background and credentials of the superintendent, whether it's Shelby County or Memphis City Schools. We provide that as a helpful intro. Behind the bio brief are the distillation, written in my own words, of what I saw as these 8 fault lines. The fault lines are the key to analyzing what must be done. You don't just start doing work. You have to find out what the condition and health of the patient is currently, and then you start to devise strategy and treatment for the patient. In this case, our children. Behind the reflections on the 8 fault lines, you will find a summary that starts to get at results. We're all results and evidence-based in this work. This summary is as good a distillation of 3 years of this reform work as you will find. And then behind that, again, you will find another helpful document that, again, distills along the strategic goals, our 6 strategic goals, which are aligned to the fault lines of the district. You'll see accomplishments in relationship to each of those strategic goals that are beginning to emerge. On the right flap of your folder, you will see several documents that focus now in on the TEI, Teacher Effectiveness Initiative, reform work in specific. Certainly you have the overall deck of slides for the presentation. But then you'll see the I Teach I Am public campaign brochure, good distillation of that work, and the online site that you can go to visit and see more about that exciting work. And then a good summary or distillation of the overall teacher effectiveness initiative and its 4 strategies. 4 strategies are the core and heart of the work. You also see the annual report and its description of those 4 strategies again, but then going deeper into some of the specific accomplishments against the milestones of that work, specific challenges that we're facing and seeing as the work emerges, and then the lessons or what we're learning about how to address those challenges and take corrective action as we move forward. Very important story emerging, because this work has not been done. We all know what a good teacher looks like, but we haven't yet in our profession been able to define it and then measure it so we can bring it to scale across all of the children and districts that we serve and all the teachers that serve our students. All right, so let's get started with context. And these slides hopefully will be helpful because there are many things that we hear out in the community as we move forward with this exciting work, but it helps sometimes to see specific data points in graphic form. So you see on the left hand Memphis City Schools, and on the right hand side Shelby County Schools. The sizes are different purposely because they give you exactly the scale and the difference in the sizes of the 2 school systems. So on Memphis City Schools, African Americans are 85% of the population. White students are 7%. Hispanic students are about 7%. And Asian Pacific Islanders are about 1% of the population. General demographics. Shelby County, African Americans comprise 38%. White students 52%. Hispanic students 5%. Asian Pacific Islanders about 5%. And equal about 105,000 students for Memphis City Schools, 48,000 students for Shelby County Schools. Free and reduced lunch status, which is an indicator of poverty, an important issue for you to consider as you consider the educational design for helping students who are from poverty backgrounds, is that in Memphis City Schools, 87% of the student body have free and reduced lunch status. And in Shelby County Schools, 37% of the population is on free and reduced lunch status. So nearly 9 out of 10 students here, 1 out of 3 students roughly here. Now, when you bring the systems together, it's important to understand what that demographic will look like. About 150,000 students, 151,000 students. In the merged school system, 73% will be African American, 22% will be white, 6% will be Hispanic, and about 3% will be Asian Pacific Islander. So the new school system will still have largely an African American population, 7 out of 10. And in terms of free and reduced lunch, or a poverty indicator, 71%, 7 out of 10 students, will essentially be poor. So you have to take a look at what the education plan will be for students in the new, larger school system, largely African American, largely poor, largely metropolitan, or from the city. You still have to do the analysis of how you will move the needle for those children. I will suggest in the next several slides how we looked at it for Memphis City Schools. When you peel the onion back, you first look at the context in which the city school system resides. And the city school system resides in the city of Memphis. And you have to understand what Memphis conditions and indicators look like that are affecting the education and full development of the students in the schools. We looked at it as both a challenge and an opportunity, and I'll say why. Memphis has serious issues and indicators that if they're not addressed, you cannot realize the vision and the goal of 100% of your students graduating college ready and going on for a college career or post-secondary career where it is a high educational attainment and thereby able to contribute back to the labor force in a significant way. Not when you have violence, poverty, and economic segregation at the levels you have in Memphis. In my mind, those three things have to be addressed, they have to be improved, and those needles have to be moved in the right direction on those three major indicators. You had the second highest violent crime rate, the highest economic segregation in the country, and the highest poverty level in the country of the top 64 cities. Now, while that is not a pretty picture, it can improve by just taking good bites, small bites, but substantive bites out of each one. Lower the poverty rate by 1 percentage point, and let's do that over time. If you do that, the opportunity dividend is $109 million annually back into the city coffers. Got to do something about poverty, and it makes a difference. If we improve the college attainment rate, meaning students going on to college and graduating 4 to 6 years later, just by 1 percentage point, because it's in the lowest quartile now, but just by 1 percentage point from 24% to 25%, that talent dividend with a different spread of economic opportunity into the community, because now families are college educated, they start to have families after being gainfully employed in the economy, and it brings back over $1 billion annually. And the Memphis City Schools, it's just a coincidence, but it's an interesting correlation. The Memphis City School budget is about $1.1 billion annually. So there again, therein is your investment. And that's why you hear us talk across the country about it being an economic and moral imperative that we educate every child well. And every child has an equal and high quality education. It pays back when we do that. It is a non-negotiable in my mind, and I know in your mind. So that was the context. Now the analysis. How do we get in and see what those 105,000 children look like, what their needs are, what the conditions are? We poured over tables and tables of data about as much as in a room about this large, and I did it for the first 3 months. I wanted to know every single piece of data that I could find about the academic achievement, the health, the demography, the communities where our children came from and went to school. When we did that at the end of that 3-month period, we found these major fault lines that emerged about our students. This was 3 years ago. The fault lines since have had strategy that we've developed to address them, because we believe that if we did not address these fault lines, you could not have a vision that just says all children will be well educated, we'll have an equal high, all that mission and strategic goal pablum that you see all across the country. It wouldn't mean anything if you didn't address these issues. Because we know from research that these issues are task one in order for children to do well and have an opportunity to do well in school. Pre-K literacy was the first one. Again, you see it in the description there. The bottom line was that over half of the children that come in to our kindergarten every year, 8,500 children were coming in every year, and they continue to come in. More than half of those children have had no prior literacy or numeracy pre-K experience to enrich their reading, their language, and their oral development skills. If you don't have that, that is where your graduation rate and your achievement gap begins. It begins in those first 5 years. So we felt it was imperative to close that gap and to do something about improving the opportunity of children to have substantive, strong pre-K experiences. And we have nearly doubled the number of children enrolled and the number of children in pre-K classrooms, and increased by 75% the number of pre-K classrooms in the Memphis City schools. That's why we're concerned about the legislative agenda taking that off the docket. Pre-K is essential for children, for all children in my opinion, but particularly the children who come from impoverished backgrounds, like you see the majority of our students. Student health was a big issue. Had never seen anything like it. When we did the analysis and the emphasis from 60,000 students that we screened, we saw that 1 in 5 failed vision tests and screens, 1 in 5 failed hearing tests, 33% were overweight, and I mean significantly overweight, and we had another 32% that needed primary care physician follow-up now, but weren't getting it. And a whole host of issues, from scoliosis to speech and language and hearing deficits to AIDS and HIV. And our kids weren't getting that help. They needed that help. And so we opened 4 health clinics, region-based, to increase the number of students who will be seen and then be referred to a primary care physician and be treated. And all of this was done for free by the way we structured our partnership with Well Child, Inc. and the area hospitals. So this is an exciting but important thing to address because our kids weren't healthy. And the fourth major area, which we've also addressed or begun to address, this is not over by any stretch of the imagination. You got to deal with these issues, but is mental health issues. 7,000 of my 105,000 kids have significant mental health issues, and they weren't being treated either. Depression, sleeplessness, anger issues, and so forth. We're addressing these through the Department of Patty Terminus, the head of it, Children's Health Services, and through our health clinics. School safety was a big issue. If the staff don't feel safe, if the students aren't safe, you can't turn page 57 to get a whole lot done. School safety was a big deal. I never seen the data that I saw, 140 serious targeted incidents per 1,000 students. When I got off the plane in 2008, the cameras, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And we had just had shootings in schools, we had weapons, and all kind of other issues that you had heard about, and they had made the national scene. Just 3 short years later, through the leadership, I brought Chief Darling in here from Miami, and we had that incident rate down from 140 to under 20. It's at 18.3 serious incidents per 1,000. I won't rest until we get it under double digits and heading toward 0. You never get to 0, but you have to have it as a goal. And through our GRASSI programs, our SHAPE program, our King-In nonviolence, our truancy assessment centers, and other strategies that we have done to systematically address student safety issues and school crime issues, you now have Memphis City Schools as a model for the whole country and being recognized by the Department of Juvenile Justice for its work on reducing youth violence and crime, particularly in school. Big deal. Then, overage for grade. We were finding that we were failing students, and failing students. Well, we already told you that over half came with no pre-K experience, no literacy and numeracy. Folks and the parents weren't reading to the children at home, weren't talking to them at home. So when that happens, it's not surprising that you then have an overage for grade if your only treatment is to fail the student. You repeat kindergarten, you repeat first grade, you repeat second grade, but with no substantive treatment. And that's what we were finding. So our overage for grade was 1/3 the population. And when you have that many children overage for grade, it doesn't take them long to figure out they won't graduate. So by 6th and 7th grade, they find other ways to get into activity, and they start getting into trouble. The streets are calling. They get into gangs. So pre-K literacy, student health, overage for grade correlate with school safety, and you have to address these because they're interrelated. Student mobility was a big one. We found that 1 in 3 students moved at least once per year, but there was no unified curriculum. There was no coherent curriculum because we had come out of an era of reform where every individual school had its own curriculum-based empowerment model. So if you moved, like our kids do, some 6 and 7 times in a year, and you go from 5th grade at Alsea School to 5th grade at LaRose Elementary School, you could be on a completely different spot or place in the curriculum. That doesn't help kids. Research already shows us that that if you move, you get 6 months further behind for every move you make. You get 6 months behind in school. In and out migration, we were losing students, but we also were gaining students. It was a very strange situation here. We would lose students through some of our counts, and you have these ADM and ADA counts, but then by January, we sometimes have as many as 118,000 kids coming into the system. Maybe not for the whole year, but into the system. So you see peak where we'd have a lot of kids moving in with relatives, coming up from the floods and the hurricanes that have happened recent years, and then by the end of the year, an out migration, and it's sometimes fluctuated by 5 to 7%. It's tough to base and figure your budget when you have that much fluctuation. We took some strategy and methods to bring back some of our families, and we have stabilized now that hemorrhaging, at least for the time being, through the creative measures that we've taken, and you can read about those in the handouts. Then the 2 most powerful pieces, which we all are going to have to address in this big ball that you see, are teacher effectiveness. That becomes the epicenter of our whole work, and we were finding that 1 in 5 teachers were leaving after the first year, 2 in 5 after 3 years. And didn't know why, because we weren't doing the exit interviews that all systems should do to find out why their folks are leaving or staying. And then the other important part about the data we were showing was that 40% of our teachers who teach tested subjects were level 1 or level 2 on their TVAL score. 40%. So if there are 2,200 teachers, I have 69, close to 7,000 teachers, and 2,200, then 40% of that are level 1 or 2. That's not good. Level 1 means you are not getting 1 year of growth, 1 year of teaching. Significantly less than 1 year of growth for 1 year of teaching. Level 2, I'm getting less than 1 year of growth for 1 year of teaching. Level 3, I'm getting 1 year of growth for 1 year of teaching. Level 4, I'm getting more than 1 year of growth for 1 year of teaching with that child. And level 5, I'm getting 2 or more years of growth for 1 year of teaching. Our level 5 teachers are out of sight. And that's what you're seeing in the I Teach, I Am campaign. But we need a lot more if we're going to hit what we're talking about for the children in our city, in our community. They can't afford to just have Miss Avery or Mr. Orgel or Mr. Pickler, that 3rd grade teacher, as their most memorable teacher who made a big impact. They've got to have every teacher making an impact because they have over 100 in grades K through 12. Every teacher has to make a difference for our children going forward. College readiness, hovering between 4 and 5%. as a district over the last 6 or 7 years since they've been taking this data from ACT. And that simply means that if you graduate, are you ready for college? And what that's defined as the 4 subtests of the ACT, English, math, reading, and science. You have to get a minimum 18 on English, minimum 22 on math, minimum 21 on reading, and minimum 24 on science. You get that or higher, and we've got kids down in Whitehaven High School getting 30s and 36s on these tests, and that's the highest score you can get is 36 because they have a competition and a culture about it. But if you don't get that, then you're not college ready. And so our whole goal as a school system, if there's one measure of your success or effectiveness as a school system and a school district, it's got to be college ready. So we're going to have to look at that for Memphis City schools and for Shelby County schools. I've been calling John all day. He's trying to get me that data for Shelby County. Don't know what it is, but I know that at our top high school, White Station High School, in terms of academics, it's 33% college ready. That means that 67 aren't ready. See? That's at the top high school. And then I've got a lot that are at 1% and 2%. And when you peel that onion back, it's because there's no rigor in the curriculum. There's no AP courses. There's no dual enrollment course offerings. Forever, that was the case. We changed all of that, adding rigor, adding more AP, adding more dual enrollment, such that now we have the largest dual enrollment program in the country. We have more AP courses being offered. Hispanic AP enrollment is up 60%. African American is up 17 to 24%, depending on which year you take over the last 4 years, and we're not going to stop. This expectation that, well, not every kid is ready for college. I heard that every day, everywhere when I got off the plane here. At Kroger, at Schnucks, at Paradiso, at everywhere. And I'd ask, is that what you feel for your kid? Well, no, my kids go to private school, or I got my kid at Harvard and Yale and so forth. But I'm just telling you, most kids don't have. Well, even if they're not going to college, they still have to pass the Common Core state standards. And the Common Core state standards are the highest standards ever in the history of American public education. And so it doesn't matter. If you go to the Army, if you go to barbering school, if you become an electrician or a carpenter, you still have to pass your math. I want an electrician who was good at math and science fixing my electrical wiring. And so that's the issue here. The standards have to still stay high for every kid. These are the fault lines. They have to be addressed. You will see treatment and strategy throughout this work over the last 3 years, and you're beginning to see emerging results against these fault lines. These fault lines will become fissures and chasms and chasms if they're not addressed. That's the hypothesis. That's the premise. Now, teacher effectiveness is at the epicenter of this reform work. Without improving our labor force, our human capital, the city cannot become a city of choice. And companies in this economy and in this market cannot attract the quality of workers that they need to continue to advance in their business. So, great teachers in every classroom, every day, every subject has got to be what we're after here. This graphic alone depicts the issue. It goes right to the heart of it. We have, as I said, about 2,200, 2,300 teachers who teach tested subjects. This is our top-ranked elementary school several years ago when we applied for this Gates Foundation grant. This was our lowest-ranked elementary school as far as teacher rankings. You can see in the one ranked number one that there are quite a few teachers who are at level 3. Level 3 would be this baseline right here. Anything below that is a 1 or 2. Anything above it is 3, 4, or 5. 3 is right at. That means 1 year of instruction, 1 year of growth. And you see that they have several teachers, and this is just a symbol of it. There are more than these numbers of teachers in those schools that are getting growth from their students, more than a year of it. And that's what we need for all of our teachers. This teacher's ranked 42nd, this one 93rd, so forth and so on. And this one down near the 22,000. And then here's our lowest ranked school, but look at this one teacher. And then you go in these schools, you'll know who this teacher is. But bless her soul, and I say it's probably a her because 73% of my teachers are female. But it may not be. But bless her soul, what she's accomplishing for her students. But down the hall, next door, up the stairwell, and down the hall again, probably all nice people. Everybody says he's a nice person. But that's not going to get it for us. And it's not going to get it for our children. And so our goal is to get this for all of our children, for all of the subjects, for all the grades. And we can do that. We know how to do that. Emphasis on support and development of our teachers. Not exiting them. Some will have to be. But the majority we can develop to here. This is not genetic. If it were genetic, we'd be in real deep trouble. It's a calling, but it's not genetic. We can develop this. It cannot be a lottery pick who your child gets as a teacher. That's what this is saying. And that's what our work is all about. Strategy. You've had context. You've had analysis, cursory of how we go about our work. Now, what are we going to do about it? And what you then see, instead of having your strategic goals already developed, you refine or develop your strategic goals now, and I suggest in the new system as well, to align with what your fault lines were, to align with what your needs are. Otherwise, they're just sitting out there unconnected or disconnected to anything important. These 6 strategic goals are aligned to the academic fault lines, to the system as a whole that needed to improve in its operation and fiscal areas as well as its academic. Parent and community engagement has to come up. The health issues that we talked about, safety and discipline, and then the diversity needs as reflected in our staff and our students. They're aligned to the work now. You then set a vision for your district based on the analysis of the fault lines and analysis of the data. You don't start with a vision, in my professional judgment. Your vision emerges after you see what the system needs. And so you see in our vision together as a board, we said we want a world-class education system that's rigorous for all students, but it must have an effective teacher in every classroom, every day. 100% of our students graduate ready for college or career. And we further imagine that our graduates accumulate wealth, not just are at McDonald's or Backyard Burger or where I see my kids sometime. And I say, what are you going to do next? You're getting ready to go to school, aren't you? No, this is what I'm doing. No. And then help them to become leaders in science, technology, medicine, education, and business, which so many are, but too many aren't. And when you're not, then you increase your social welfare roles and you directly affect and hinder the full economic development of your region. This is very important. I'm not going to read through them, but what I want to emphasize here is the board not only said we believe. You have core beliefs. You hear about that all the time. What they added was commitment. And this board that emerges is going to have a commitment to educate all of the children in the new district effectively and well, because that's where you then put your energy, your resources, and your finances. That shows up in commitment. So when you talk about committing to all children, all emphasis, achieving at high global academic standards, there's your work. That's your work. Committing to high-performing organization, high-reliability organization, highly efficient, highly effective. We have a DEI in Memphis City Schools, a district effectiveness initiative. We're trying to improve on every aspect of our operation, not just teaching. And you'll see evidence of that in this document, in every area, from finance, central nutrition, risk management, building and facilities, real estate, transportation, everywhere, every area, making significant strides that were better from several years ago and far better than the public perception about it. These are the facts. So commitment has to follow belief. Otherwise, it's just a belief. Now we're into, you can begin to shape your reform agenda. And this is an hour and a half for me. I get very passionate about it just going through this. But I'll point out some key pieces to it. It talks about what the parents and the community need to do to help the child grow. That's the blue part going across the top. Look at those benchmarks. Look at those milestones. Then talks about what the district and what teachers need to do to help children move along the pathway for success from 0 to 5 years old, end of kindergarten, end of 3rd grade, end of 8th grade, heading into 9th, 10th grade, 11 and 12, and then beyond. Very important benchmarks up there from all children enrolled in some kind of preschool and getting that enrichment early on and getting their vocabulary up to 6,000 to 7,000 words by the time they're 5 years old versus 400 or 500 words. That's the gap right there. Getting all children reading and enjoying reading by the end of 3rd grade. And that's why you see the pre-K through 3 continuum, respecting and understanding individual differences in the development of our young children. And then everybody has an academic plan, an ed plan. That's a unique feature. That is an innovative feature for Memphis City Schools. Every child has an ed plan. And that plan is substantive and tracks the student's development and is tailored individually for that student. And keeps him or her on path to graduation, does not let him or her fall and slip in the cracks down in these early grades as per overage for grade, as was happening before. And then kids passing and mastering algebra, passing their courses, not failing courses in 9th grade, getting that plan, that Explore, and that ACT score up to 19, and then beyond and above that is the goal. And all of the strategy that comes with that at every level. These are the strategies for each of those developmental levels. And then these are the systemic, system-wide strategies that we are undertaking, including teacher effectiveness and race to the top work here. And then the game changers. We get this done, get it done together, get it done well, and build on the successes that we're seeing, throw out what doesn't work, and you'll start to see that poverty rate go down, that violence rate go down, economic segregation close, improve, close that gap. And then content mastery, we have to get that done. Graduation rate up, college and workforce readiness up. These are the game changers for the city, for the school district, whatever it is. And then the student, often left out of reform, and we see it, but I'm a no nonsense on this. Students have to study. Students have to do their work. And parents have to get this enforced. There's too many students from whatever background that aren't studying. They're doing something, but they got to study harder to meet these new Common Core. These Common Core are no joke. Now, if you can spend 13 hours on the cell phone, on the computer, and on these other things that they're spending time on, this social network stuff, then they can spend the time studying when they understand how important it is in terms of their competitiveness with students who they're now competing with from across the world. All right, we're going to go into the heart of the work, and this will be the second half of our presentation, and we'll get through this with pace, but with substance on the key points. And these are the 4 strategies of the Teacher Effectiveness Initiative, and I do want you to be aware of this work. So, define and measure effective teaching. Very important. Getting it done, getting it approved, moving on it right now. Increase rigor in hiring and retention. Very pleased with the work we're doing there to dramatically improve the caliber and quality of our teaching force, particularly the early candidates, and developing our veteran force as well. Improve teacher support and compensation. Important strategy, moving it along, and then enhancing the school climate and culture. My colleague, Tequila Banks, will guide us through these 3 slides per each strategy, and then we'll close. The first part will be on the main aspects. The second will be accomplishments and challenges. And the third part for each strategy will be what we're learning. All can be done 1 minute each slide. Go. Promise.
Good evening, everyone. So strategy 1 is really about defining and measuring effective teaching. What you see here is a graphical representation of our teacher effectiveness measure. This measure is really, we feel, more holistic, because if you think about what the really true purpose of the new evaluation system and work is, it's really about knowing how to better support teachers in a more comprehensive and holistic manner. And so, like the rest of the state, 35% of our teachers' new evaluation is based on student growth or student outcomes. Then we have 15% that's based actually on student achievement. Again, those are driven by the state law. The difference for our system, the teacher effectiveness measure, comes to the other half of this pie. 40% of our teachers' evaluation is based on observation of practice. So that's where a certified and trained observer goes into the classroom to look at what specific moves and what specific behaviors that a teacher is exhibiting that we hope leads toward greater student achievement outcomes. 5% then is based on stakeholder perceptions. What used to happen with evaluations often, a person would go into a room, try to guess or really figure out, are teachers teaching and are students learning? What we know is that if you ask your children what went on at school today, your kids, right, can tell you, I learned X or I learned this. They can tell you about their experience in the classroom. And so what that component, that stakeholder perceptions work is about, it's really about getting at student engagement and their experience in the classroom. It is absolutely not a popularity contest where students say, oh, I like Miss Smith or I like Miss Prescott. Instead, it's this is what it was like for me. My teacher challenges me. My teacher pushes me to work hard. So hearing directly from students about their experience, again, recognizing the importance of student engagement and really driving student achievement. And then 5% teacher content knowledge. As Dr. Cash talked about, with the new Common Core standards, they're much more rigorous. For example, like Dr. Cash mentioned, many of us took algebra in the 9th grade. Our students now, under the new standards, are taking algebra as early as 5th grade. And so for us, our teachers that are teaching in that area, it may have been quite a while since they took algebra, obviously, themselves or even taught it. So we need to make sure that teachers have the right amount of content knowledge to teach to the new standards. And so, again, that's our new teacher effectiveness measure. It was approved by the state of Tennessee as an alternate model for teacher evaluation. It is being deployed now. One of the lessons we hear often from some of our partners, lots of districts around the country are talking about new evaluation systems. Here in Tennessee, specifically here in Memphis, we're actually deploying a new innovative evaluation tool. We participated in some of the work with the Gates Foundation on some of the research around the Measures of Effective Teaching project to help really drive and help us know what are some good measures for effective teaching. Obviously, we're making some great progress with this work. It doesn't come without its fair share of challenges. For example, only 35% of teachers have value-add data. That's not a unique problem for Memphis. That's a unique problem for the entire state of Tennessee. And Tennessee is one of the states that has 20-plus years of TVOS, or of value-add data. So as a country, as we shift in this direction, that's a challenge that we all have to continue to address. And also helping people understand the difference between value-add or growth measures and pure student achievement. So, for example, a teacher that gets a student that maybe performs at a lower level, a teacher would say, well, is it fair to me that my evaluation is based on a student who just struggles? Well, that's where the growth measure comes in. It's not, are all of your students making 100% or making all A's? It's when you got the student performing at a particular level, did you help them improve? So when Dr. Cash talks about 1 year of growth for 1 year of instruction, that's really what that's about. But we understand that there's an awareness and an education component that we need to continue to address there. And again, this is with a total seat change in evaluation. In the state of Tennessee, before the new legislation, teachers were evaluated once every 5 years. Once every 5 years. Now, under the new law, teachers are evaluated annually, and then built into that annual evaluation, they have 4 to 6 observations per year. So this is a total shift in what's happening in a school, both for principals and for teachers. But again, the goal of the evaluation is not as a gotcha. It's not doing it for the sake of compliance. It's having observations so that we can help teachers become more effective in their practice.
Needless to say, the anxiety level at this time is high among our teachers and among our principals. This is hard work, and it's very new for them. But by having face-to-face, one-on-one communications with our teachers and pre- and post-conferencing, we're going to have to cut down on the amount of time of those conferences. We're finding in the early anecdotal evidence that the teachers appreciate and are like the kind of robust discussions that are occurring about their craft. Communication has to be effective and timely, and the training emphasis has to be on developing, not merely punishing or exiting our human capital.
So strategy 2 is about increasing the rigor in hiring and retention of teachers. What you see here, and I'll just quickly to orient you to this table, we partnered with our HR department, working in conjunction with the New Teacher Project. We set out to really make better efforts at recruiting. We used to hire very late, July, August. Well, quite naturally, any teachers that were graduating, the best of that graduating class had already accepted other jobs, right? And so we made some efforts to really get a robust pool, because as Dr. Cash talked about the attrition rate that we have, recognizing that you have a lot of turnover, it becomes even more critical to make sure that those teachers that you're hiring to replace are at or exceed the quality of those teachers that you're losing. And so in April 2010, at the end of the process, I'm looking at the bottom row now, 21 candidates were ready and approved to staff our schools as of April. This was our target to begin staffing and hiring April, again shifting it up. Now again, Dr. Cash mentioned the attrition rate. We typically hire around 600 teachers per year. So in April we had 21, not good, right? So we really ratcheted up our recruitment efforts, and using the same standards in April 2011, that same point in time we had over 1,100 of the pool ready to staff and hire for our schools. The point also here, then, we kept recruiting, kept doing those efforts, and in August had 1,800. The research clearly shows, obviously, if you have a high pool, you're much more likely to be able to really get at a high quality and high potential teacher. So again, some of the other achievements that we've learned here, again, we actually filled 100% of our identified vacancies prior to the start of school. We were able to work with many of our partners, Teach for America, Memphis Teacher Residency, Memphis Teaching Fellows, as well as with our Teachers Union, MEA, to make sure that we did get our teachers placed. Some of the challenges, obviously, staffing becomes even much more complex and vulnerable, as Dr. Cash mentioned, as you have student mobility and issues like that, that affects staffing, and so we just have to continue working through those. The state of Tennessee passed a new tenure law that has address staffing implications, policy and practice around that new tenure law. It will be put to the test this year, so we're anticipating working through those complex issues as we continue to make sure we have the best teachers, the most high potential teachers that we're able to staff for our schools.
We've got to get our data systems into the 21st century. That's true of both the county and the city, and we're happy to say that we're working together on getting a shared RFP for the ERP system for the new system. So this will really get us to be able to drive data and drive performance in the system when we can get real-time, accurate data in all of our business enterprises. Some of the lessons we're learning on the issue of this second strategy is that we have to change not only the thinking of individuals, but our overall systems thinking, and systems have to change. Strategic thinking and systems thinking is a rare art these days. Folks are very good at doing what you tell them to do or what you ask them to do. We've got to build and develop better systems thinkers. Also, the policies that align teacher evaluation, tenure, and the new TIM are urgently needed and are underway. So the work got out ahead of the policy. Now the policy must catch up, and you will see a cluster of new reform policies coming to the November board meeting in this regard.
Strategy 3 is really about, now that we have a better understanding of how to define and measure effective teaching, then what do we do with that in order to improve teacher support? And so this is really about providing support based on individual teacher needs. That's very prescriptive and aligned to what we're seeing from their teacher effectiveness measure results. Also, one of the goals of the initiatives for this strategy is really to make sure that we have career path opportunities for teachers. Dr. Cash talked about the attrition rates. Lots of teachers leave the field because there are no career path opportunities for them. So that's also a part of this work, to make sure that we tap into their strengths, to make sure that our most effective teachers stay with students but have options as far as career pathing. We'll talk a little bit about the reformed compensation work that is under planning right now, and then making sure that we have ways to assign our most effective teachers where they're needed the most, and then making sure that we have opportunities to recognize and reward high-performing teachers as well. So this visual is kind of a picture of the different compensation structure, and just want to make sure everyone understands this. Under our current compensation structure, as you see this pie chart, 73% of our total teacher compensation costs are based on base salary, and then the remaining 27% is based on either degree contribution or years of service. What the research is emerging is that not necessarily do either of those degree contribution or length of service lead to high student achievement outcomes. So what that means is, being on the job more and more years, some teachers get better, some don't. So there's no consistent pattern of, if the longer you teach, the better your student achievement outcomes. And so what we're looking at here is having a reform philosophy, having opportunities for teachers that are getting better productivity and more performance, having other options, again, based on the TIM, having other options available for those teachers. And so what you see here are these basic career option paths for teachers. You've heard a lot of talk about the master teacher concept. Those are the teachers that are frankly getting the highest amount of student growth. Dr. Cash talked about those that are helping students not only get a year's worth of growth for a year's worth of instruction, but making sure they actually begin to catch up from some of the places where they're behind. Again, some of the achievements here, we actually piloted some reflective practice work for teachers to begin to share some of their own best practices with one another. We've actually initiated a district-wide recognition program so that we begin to, as we identify and know who our top performers are, making sure we retain them so that they can then help work with us to develop other teachers moving forward. I had a wonderful practitioner summit where all of our teachers were touched and trained train on the new, not only the new teacher effectiveness measure, but began to get some professional development aligned to some of the work going forward. Obviously, some challenges taking the work to scale, frankly. We've been in conversations with lots of other districts supporting, 500 teachers in a differentiated manner. It's so much different from trying to support 7,000 teachers in a differentiated manner. So taking that to scale is obviously an opportunity for us. There are obviously concerns about teachers. We're having some new technology to work with our teachers, and so obviously want to continue to work through some of those issues. The speed of implementation, the whole state of Tennessee, frankly, with our Race to the Top work, is moving forward in an accelerated manner against Common Core, against some of the other things, but our students can't wait. But we do recognize that there are implementation challenges when you're trying to take this level of change management work to scale.
And so some of the lessons that we're learning is, again, like so many of our business models, and many would say our educational model in general is broken, but we cannot fire our way to Finland, okay? Finland often recognized as one of the top performers in the world on the TIMS instrument, and we have to support our teachers because many of our teachers are from Memphis. They born and raised here, grow here, and stay here. It's encouraging to hear folks come up to me and say, I'm a teacher in your system. I've been teaching 36 years. I've been teaching 43 years. I've been teaching 38 years. So you have to develop your teaching core more than anything else. And so we are learning that, and how to do that will largely come from teachers themselves. They know what they need to do and how they can improve. So we're listening much more intentionally to them about that. Also, the whole area of compensation reform in public education is a largely unprecedented effort. Teachers don't go into this field for more money. You may think it's that. It's not. That's not the money. It's the conditions. It's the support. It's the encouragement. It's the am I valued? Do you respect me? Do you appreciate my contribution to a democratic society? That's really what matters more to them. So when you talk about compensation reform and having different tiers of that, we've got to make haste sort of delicately and purposefully in this area because it's unprecedented in public education. But nonetheless, I think the time has arrived to do it, and we're going to proceed with urgency. Last strategy.
And the final strategy is really around improving the school climate and culture and the context to enable effective teaching. So if you think about the teacher in the center, there's two ends of that spectrum. There's the principal or the leadership, and then there are students on the other side. And so a part of the work is, frankly, improving the principal's leadership capacity. And so Dr. Cash has mentioned our leadership effectiveness work, or referred to as our LEI work. Also related to that is making sure that students are at the core and at the center. Obviously, a student that is more engaged is more likely to have improved student achievement outcomes. And so we, as Ms. Prescott mentioned, someone mentioned our Envoy program. That's one of the pieces that's pivotal to our work, making sure that students are driving that change in their schools. And then obviously we have some other technology and other kind of school leadership pieces that are in place.
And this student engagement piece is very important because these are not just our student envoys that we're heading toward training 3,000 of them. They're not just your student government association presidents and so forth. These are often kids who are most disenfranchised in the school environment. Some of them are gang leaders and gang members. So these students are teaching us a lot about what it's going to take to change the culture from doing well in school, that's not good, to it's cool to do well in school. And that's what these envoys are telling you. They're not only telling you it's cool, but ask me how to do it. And they have strategy for doing that.
Finally, couple quick points here. Same thing, obviously, achievements and challenges both. Our student envoys are out front center working, have 1,800 now. At scale, we will be at about 3,000. Some challenges, obviously, going forward are principals have a lot on their plates, obviously, and so helping them to get some support to make sure that they are able to be the instructional leaders in their school.
And I'm piloting for them what I call a business operations leader. That's repooling some money, existing resources, and instead of having a financial secretary and this secretary and that office and that, taking those 3 or 4 positions and upping the level of credential and skill needed and having that as the assistant to the principal. And the principals like this idea in our monthly sessions with them. We'll pilot that and see its success. Finally, then, the lessons we're learning about Strategy 4 is teachers are effective to the extent that they can teach in settings and under circumstances that help get them better. So it's the conditions for teaching that are critical. And we have that as part of our strategy and our work where it's not in other districts associated with this Bill and Melinda Gates work. We think that, as we saw in that graphic, the teachers who weren't performing well and weren't getting that 1 year of growth for 1 year instruction, they also had an ineffective principal. So there's a correlative there between school building leadership and the level at which you can get the most out of your human capital. Leadership effectiveness is a critical component, as I'm saying, and then the data systems. And in this budget going forward, this is going to be about a $28+ million project. If we combine with both systems, it might be even a little more. We have $13 million from the Gates Foundation. We have another 4 in Race to the Top. So we have money front-loaded to try to get this done. We're having a meeting next Friday with the folks from Nashville to see what kind of business intelligence systems they're using and see if we can't glean some efficiency in pricing once we determine what our needs are as a combined system. Finally, then, results. There are a lot of results that you will see sprinkled throughout these documents, too many to mention here, but I will point to you where you can go online and look in greater detail at this work. Certainly, as I said, you have the major accomplishments in not only the academic areas that are starting to yield, such as graduation rate, which is up. College readiness is still a challenge and needs to continue to be aggressively addressed. As we said, we address that all the way back down the pipeline, not just at 12th grade. It has to start at pre-K and before, and then come on up. The achievement gap is still significant throughout the country, and it will be in the new district. There is a story within a story here, and that is the Hispanic population is performing well and growing rapidly in their achievement relative to the white population in Shelby County. So that is a good story. And African Americans under the old standards were making really good gains. Now we have to climb again under the new Common Core. And I think every student, white, Asian, Pacific, Islander, Hispanic, and black, will have to improve their achievement rates in order to get where we need to be against the new Common Core standards. The number of highly effective teachers recruited, retained, and developed, you're starting to see some good data. We showed you some good data points on Strategy 2 in regard to that, but again, that work is just emerging. Better compensation and support. When we differentiate, teachers really, they love their profession, but they never did really want to be one size fits all. And they do know who, even among themselves, are the more effective colleagues. So we want to compensate those top performers on a number of variables, not just test scores, and begin to support and mentor the ones that need the help so that they can become master teachers. And indeed they can. And then the more equitable distribution. This is a key concept because right now every school system has really, really good teachers, but a lot of times they're clustered in our top high schools and in our calculus and in our AP classes and so forth. That won't work going forward. That just increases the gap. We have to increase the number and the spread or distribution of highly effective teachers. Race to the top metrics. We already are hitting 2 out of 3 of our benchmarks at this time, and so that's good news. And we just missed by a few points our benchmark in English language arts. We've hit it in the graduation rate, and we hit it in the math area for Race to the Top. So this slide shows where we are relative to our milestones for Race to the Top. And then last, feel free, please, to go online and look at our district data dashboard. This is where we're tracking all of the measures that relate to each of those fault lines that we talked about and to each of our strategic goals. This also, you will see the superintendent's performance evaluation tool, which we think is a model for the country. It's very rigorous. It has two parts, an objective part and a subjective part, and you can see specific results along those fault line issues and along the academic achievement as well as business effectiveness measures in that instrument. And then not least, to go online to this website and see all about our TEM and our emerging indicators for the teacher effectiveness work. So all in all, exciting. Work is out of the station, down the track. Much of it, I do believe, as you look at the data, needs to continue, but it's provided this evening for just your consideration and thought as we go forward, because the work and challenges ahead are impressive, needless to say. And so you do need to determine, we need to answer this question fundamentally. It is the question. And that is, how will we ensure that the students who have the most obstacles to academic success, in fact, get the most support so that they can reach academic success? If we believe that about our teachers, we certainly need to believe it about our students. And therein lies the work. Thank you for your attention. And Chairman Prescott, I'll turn it back to you for however you'd like to have the discussion flow from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Cash and Tequila, and also to Josh. I didn't get to say that before he left. But it is very important for us as we approach this monumental task to understand the different needs, the different directions in both of these two school districts that are working so hard to meet the needs of the students, and I think that this will be helpful to us. I do want to tell you that next week we will have a presentation by John Atkins, Superintendent of the Shelby County Schools, so that we can understand the total picture, and knowing that the total picture is going to be the combined picture, and that's what we're going to have to be doing here. We're also going to have a little bit of data presented to us next week from that was collected by our own member Kenya Bradshaw from Stand for Children, some of the data and information from parents. But now we do have, Dr. Case, you did a good job getting us through that, so that we've got a good 30 minutes. We're going to try to get through by 6:30. That's been our goal. We've got a good 30 minutes. Let's just open it up for questions, and if you could direct them to Dr. Cash, I'm sure he would then direct them if he wishes for someone else to answer the questions. So just go right ahead and take off with your questions.
Can I ask a couple on the teacher scores and related to also teachers leaving? So you talked about the numbers of level 1 or level 2. So several things. How many level 5 teachers do you have? And then what is the mix of teachers exiting? Compared to the existing teacher base, what does their level look like? And where I'm headed is, do you feel like, as teachers retire or leave, are you looking at this like an opportunity because of that you can hire better because there's not the correlation between performance and seniority necessarily? Or are you looking at it like this is a bad thing and you're worried that this many leave? Last thing, and then I'll quit asking questions. How many that do leave per year, how many are fired, and how many quit?
So thank you, Staley, for those questions. First, I don't see it as a bad thing or a good thing. I have to clarify this concept, because the notion is out there that veteran teachers, senior teachers are bad, and that new teachers and young teachers are good, okay? And that's just a misnomer out there. It's much more complex than that. What we're trying to do is grow effective new teachers, because it takes you a minute or two to become effective as a new teacher. You're not effective on the first day of hire. And then we're trying to make sure we retain and use our veteran effective teachers to train, mentor, guide, and support our younger and newer high potential teachers. Some of the new teachers need to go. Some of the veterans need to move on. But what we want is a good mix in every school of both veteran and new. We have a 54% of our teachers are level 3, 4, and 5. What is it, 17 that are 5, level 5, somewhere around that? 17% level 5, a goodly number level 4. But 3, 4, and 5 are good. Now, it's complex because you're not a level 5 only, especially if you teach more than one subject, or if you're an elementary teacher, who teaches in a self-contained classroom. You might be level 5 in math and level 2 in science. You might be level 5 in reading and language arts and level 3 or even 2 or 1 in something else. We see that. What is really rare, but it is out there, are teachers who are level 5 in everything they teach. Everything they teach. And that's what you want to grow and use as models. And we are using some of them as our models. And they're not the newest teachers. These are the veteran teachers. Because what's really difficult, and you can easily infer it, is to become level 5, which is growth every year, for many years. If you're here 2 years and gone, or in and out, you might be, for those 2 years, do really, really well, but the key is over time. Because as I said, most of our teachers, most of them do stay here, and they stay in the system. So that's the trick, and it's really hard, and so we really want to commend and value those veteran teachers who are able to get value-add growth over a long period of time.
And I sure didn't mean to imply that they were not.
I know.
And so then against the 54% that are level 3, 4, or 5, how does that compare to the population that leaves? Are they pretty much close to that, or?
Yeah, Toquilla?
Yeah, so the use of teacher-level value-add data is brand new. This is actually the first year that we've had that level of information under the state law. TVOS data was protected, and so we haven't known, frankly, the effectiveness level in that way of the teachers that were leaving and or staying. But what we do know, of our teachers that are pre-tenure, and we have about 1,800, we would lose last year, for example, about 46 to 50, and I don't have the specific numbers here, around 46 to 50-ish were dismissed, so that would interpret to you fired. The remainder of the teachers that left, there were teachers that already had tenure, probably close to 100 of those were recommended for dismissal. The remaining numbers of teachers that we have lost were teachers that resigned or retired. Some may have frankly been counseled out, so they willingly left, but the remainder were by choice. But remember, that was under the old system where teachers were evaluated once every 5 years. So July 2011, this past July, was when the new law went into place, where teachers hiring and dismissal decisions now must be based on their new performance metrics.
So that data get much more clean, much more valid, much more reliable going forward now.
Gotcha.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? Because I understand with the new situation that these levels have only been available for a short period of time, but taking out the group that was asked to leave or fired, of that remaining group, you've repeatedly spoken about the high attrition rate, particularly after year 1 and year 3. What do you understand to be the reason why those people have left the system? Because my presumption, since they weren't asked to leave, is that they must have had some level of good performance.
Well, again, we've got some listing there of about 13, 14 indicators in order of sort of main reasoning. So there's a whole host of intersecting reasons, but conditions, teaching conditions, classroom management issues, and trouble managing the children.
Some have had licensure issues. So just different, of wide variety.
Yeah, it's about 12 or 13. You know, you have a handful of each arm, but taken together represent the reason. So there's no one compelling overdriving reason other than this is too hard, I don't get the support I need, and I thought it was different, and I'm going to go. That was sort of the number one emerging.
Okay, I just have one follow-on question, and then I'll let somebody else take the mic. I heard your closing statement about the importance of having the resources directed at the children that are most in need, and I've also heard you talk about the need to spread the most effective teachers into the locations where they are needed. What is your program that you are undertaking right now to do that? That is strategy 3 and part of strategy 4. So as we get the data on level 5 teachers and we continue to train and get the feedback from the TEM, see, this is the first year rollout of that, then we will begin to develop the program of work or the assignment. See, it becomes an assignment issue coming soon as those teachers' number grow. The number now is not large enough to get the spread that we need, so we've got to get that number significantly higher than it is now. But it is built into this program of work, and if you want to just say what year or how that will start to integrate in.
And just one point with that, those schools that were high priority or striving schools, when we staffed those schools, they were given some preference so that pool of 1,800 teachers that I mentioned, those schools had access to the highest quality of those new potentials. So to your question about the replacement and the attrition, that was also one component of our strategy. It's never been, I know teachers have had that concern that if I'm at a school that's high performing, I'll be forced to go to another school. Remember, the goal is a highly effective teacher in every classroom, in every school. So simply shuffling teachers around doesn't do the trick. It's making sure, as Dr. Cash mentioned, we have a higher number, and then you can distribute across the district.
But we will move within the school. So we envision even at your school, you can stay at your school, but you can't just teach 12th grade AP. We want you to teach 9th grade Gen Ed, 10th grade, a different maybe the mid population, and then the AP as well, so that range of experiences and then being effective in that different range truly makes you a master teacher, and then you really can help others come along that way. So we see a spread within the school across different populations of students within the region. So you might move within the region and still be near your place of residence, and then out from there. So it's mainly going to be a school-based spread and then a region-based spread is the strategy. But in each region, developing a critical mass of high-performing teachers. John.
Dr. Cash, I really appreciate the metrics you've presented, your focus on student achievement. But there's one number that really sort of sticks in my brain, and hopefully my calculation's off. But if it is, tell me, and I'll be happier. But if your district, say, is 100,000 students, and if spread across, say, 12 grades, and so that gives you 10,000 per unit, thereabouts, and then say. So if you look at this graduating senior, if only, say, 5%, I'll use that number, are actually college ready, does that say to me that 500 students per year, only 500 students per year, or thereabouts, ballpark, are actually college ready at this moment in time, or the moment in time when you presented those statistics?
In short, yes.
Okay, and so I guess the second question would be then, what would be, I looked at sort of the race to the top, what would be the metric of real success? I mean, doubling that, tripling that, and how, I mean, I know you don't have anything because the state hasn't established anything, but to me, as we develop a system here, and this is sort of our job, to me it's all about the students again, and
right.
College readiness, whether they go to college or not, is less significant to me. I mean, significant to me as a college president, but less significant to me than them they being citizens of the world. So I mean, in your own mind, and and I hate to put you to a goal here, but
No,
what would
it's
be
the right question.
sort of
19. We first got to get the ACT score, which for 10 straight years has been 17.2, 16.8, 16.9, 16.2, 17.1. You see, it's stuck in 16, 17, and many 14, 15. And then our top performing schools, and we've got about 7 really strong high schools, they're higher than the national average at 24.3 or higher with their ACT score. And as I said, that Whitehaven high school, they have a 30-30 club. It doesn't mean all the school students, but in that club, this one teacher and this one program has consistently produced students who score between 30 and 36 on not only the composite score, ACT, but also the subtest. So it shows it can be done. You have to set the culture that says this is the expectation. So the goal is to first get our composite district-wide ACT scores to 19. And that's a big lift. It's only 2 points away, or 3 points, well, it's about 3 points away, big lift. But we've done it with strategy, this Kaplan strategy, this block scheduling where they focus and have that preparatory period focused on ACT prep strategies and so forth and so on. We've talked about the strategies. But until you can get students to get that ACT up to 19 or higher, they're not going to be college ready, and it hasn't been an expectation for a long time here. So kids will even tell you, nobody expects me to go to college, so that you don't even take the ACT. What we're now first doing is closing the opportunity gap, John. So the first answer to your question, A, is to get more kids to take the ACT and prepare them for it, and then start to get the overall scores up. At first, they'll go down a little bit, as we saw a little drop, as we increase the number taking it. Because the ones that were taking it historically in Memphis City schools were only those who, guidance counselors and teachers and others said, your college material, you're not. Your college material, you're not. You see? So we first have to change that and then get it. So 19 is the goal, then 21, and then from there.
Okay. That's helpful, because just as a follow-up, again, 500 to me cannot populate even the colleges here in Memphis. I mean, it just basically would populate my freshman class as a small university. So, I mean, I'd love for these students to be able to stay in Memphis, succeed at some of the colleges in Memphis, and then stay in Memphis to become leaders in this community. So 500 is definitely not enough. So,
well, we're with you,
the
but we also have to look at it as a larger issue, because even at our top schools in Memphis, you don't have 100% of them producing kids college ready. I think the overall in Shelby County, I was trying to get this from John today, I think it's 26% college ready for the whole district, okay? Then if you look at Houston High School and you look at Southwind High School, see, that'll be different. And then you look at our White Station High School, which is our highest at 33%, it's still not going to get it. Now, do Ivy League recruiters come here? Yeah, they come here. They come to Central. They come to Whitehaven. They come to White Station. But my point is we've got to get a far greater percentage across this country into college-ready rate level, period. And we got a long way to go to get there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Barbara, you take care of that.
Tommy, Mr. Hart, would you?
Thank you. I want to go back to the Gates Foundation. But before that, I want to commend you for, I realize the task and the challenge of a public monopoly-like education to implement policies and procedures from the private sector a lot of times. And what I heard today were things like that. But going back to the Gates thing, and I'm not too knowledgeable about that, but I think I recall in some newspaper articles that it's about $30-some-odd million a year. Is that correct?
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation
Right.
Amount to us here at Memphis City Schools,
Right.
it's about $13 million per year over 7 years.
Okay.
Total $92 million.
Okay, and you mentioned some other grants, Race at the Top and everything. I'm assuming they're short-term as well. And I guess my question comes from at that point in time when they run out. I'm just assuming that you're planning on going to the county commission and saying, hey, we need to get this funded.
No.
Dr. Cash, he used to be on the county commission, you said.
I can tell. I tell you what, not for this particular issue, because we have in our plan a run rate that we move and reallocate the way we spend dollars to help sustain this work once we see that it is teacher-led, teacher-driven, and working and effective. So there is a built into the plan. And we'd be happy to present it to you, but because we've had to continue to modify that plan, a 10-year run rate from now for 10 years, even when this funding stops.
Okay.
And it's not dependent on taxpayer dollars. Well, it's not dependent on additional dollars. It's dependent on being innovative about how we're spending money on salaries, benefits, and other a proportion of that 85% of our budget that we spend in a particular way.
Because I'm assuming that when you add the county system in, which is about 50% of the cities, that number is going to balloon to a larger amount. And like former Chairman Avery sitting in that chair, it becomes a real challenge. Especially when I think about what is going to be the composition of the county commission, because there's going to be substantial turnover before those programs run out. And I see some real challenges there, and they need to be, sound like you've given a great deal of thought to that, so I'll be interested in hearing in the future how that plays out.
Where we are going to come back to the commission and need money is this money that we've lost, revenue we've lost when the city funding ceases. That equates to nearly $1 billion over the next 10 years. So, and it's gone to gone to serve these underserved populations that if you don't address these fault line issues, it costs money. For every one of those fault line issues, it costs money. And that is where we're going to need money to offset some of those issues going forward. And you're going to find that in any which way you shake it, you're going to find to serve a 70% population, free and reduced lunch, that has significant pre-K, early literacy, health issues, and other. In order to get their achievement rate up against the new Common Core standards, there's going to have to be money put against the plan. Even if it's something as basic but as increasingly common as what? Increasing the school day and increasing the school year. Because our kids are going to need more time to get this work achieved and get them to a proficiency level than other children. It's not going to be 8 hours a day, everybody, we race to see who gets learned what in 8 hours. It's going to have to be an innovative, new way of educating our children that it will include longer day, longer year, virtual school, online courses, learning any place, anywhere, anytime. And it's going to need a different kind of allotment of dollars, I think, for the county as well. I mean, everybody's going to need. This is expensive. We're not going to get here by reducing the expenditures and still want to be racing to the top of something. You're going to have.
That's not the
intent
of my question at all, because I don't know of any
Yeah.
information we've ever been supplied or research that I've done that says consolidation reduces the cost of education. It's just making sure we realize the dynamics in this community, and we have the highest tax rate in the state of Tennessee.
But one of the lowest in the country.
That may be true and everything, but it will be a challenge, and not to let it surprise us in how we work on it.
Thank you. It's a good question. Thank you.
Dr. Green, I think did you have your hand up?
Yes. You mentioned multi-level assignments in schools, and I was wondering if you could help us understand if teacher effectiveness, if there was a mechanism for teacher. You mentioned multi-level assignments within a school, to follow up on Chris's question, and is there a teacher effectiveness component that follows that assignment to make sure that teachers who are teaching other students are effective?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yeah, that is built into the TIM, that those 4 dimensions, student growth, other academic achievement, observation, content knowledge, and stakeholder perception, that will generate an algorithm, a number. You'll get a number out of that from 1 to 5. No matter what population of students you're teaching, you will get an algorithm for those students. And so it's still early. We're still baking this thing, but we're on the track to be able to do that. One of the things we have to do, Dr. Greens, we have to be able to predict an effective teacher earlier than just waiting and saying we don't know and hopefully. And we had a long, well, didn't we? We had an outside the line conversation in Boston last week with a teacher education dean, someone in higher education who loved the presentation, but then challenged us and said, but we can't really predict what a good teacher is. You know, I've been working in teacher education for X. I mean, we can't. It's an unknown. And I said, well, I respectfully accept your view, but that is not acceptable going forward. It is going to be our job. I'd like higher education to be part of that work, but it is absolutely going to be our job to predict who will be an effective teacher and who may not be an effective teacher once we get a critical mass of data on you as a teacher. It's done in any other profession all the time, and so we need to be very predictive about that.
I understand the concept, but I didn't want the perception to linger out there that you were sending a teacher into a situation where there was no indication of success or there was no safeguard for success.
I see then. I see what you're saying. Thank you for that. Yes.
Mr.
Tequila,
Boyd.
you annotate that.
Yes, a part of the teachers, we call it the evaluation cycle. So it's not just here's your evaluation, goodbye. A part of that is their growth plan. And so as teachers are assigned to whatever content area and whatever their grade areas are, part of that work, the district's work, the principal's work, all of those that support teachers, is to make sure that they get the professional development and the support that's very specific and prescriptive to their needs. So for a teacher that's new to teaching second grade, for example, obviously a part of their growth support and plan would be professional development and support, mentoring about that specific piece that they're now teaching. I hope that's responsive to.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Boyd, you had a question.
Dr. Cash, a question around the good work that you've done with regard to school safety. You know, early on you have identified that as a fault line. Significant number of incidents when you first arrived, and having reduced that down to 20 violent, or whatever you called those incidents. What is it in terms of your 4 strategies? I understand it would probably fall under strategy number 4. What are you continuing to do to move that number lower? How is that evolving within the
issue on safety?
Yes.
Thank you, Jim, for that question. What we're finding and learning is that there are multiple dimensions to the safety issue. The most overt one is the violence and the fighting, the hitting, the overt. But there's other dimensions like psychological violence, emotional safety, and the like. So those strategies go to our overall health and wellness curriculum and our Student Envoy project, where they're developing the learning communities that focus on teaching different ways to behave, to interact, to address anger, and to address issues that the students are having. So it's a multi-pronged approach, and they're not all done just within that strategy 5. They start to spill into strategy 4, into strategy 1 for academic achievement and the like. And we continue to look for partners. We continue to look for folks that can help us shift the prerequisite indicators or prerequisite sets of skills that are needed in order for children to be healthy, fully function hardworking, mature, conscientious, contributing members back to society. We know as adults that work continues, but certainly our young people need that help as well. And we've appreciated the partnership, albeit not comprehensive in the sense that it touches a whole lot of students, but it is important, the work that we've done with you in the past. So we're looking for other work and partners on that, but certainly our core work comes through our safety and security team that partners with MPD, criminal justice system, Judge Person down at the criminal court, and other strategies. We put in a new learning center, for example, down at criminal court. Once kids get into the justice system, doesn't mean we should give up on them. And so we're seeing an on-ramp. We're building an on-ramp back for a lot of the kids who historically would be given up on. Kids who were dropping out because of gang involvement and because of too many excessive suspensions and expulsions now are in our preparatory academies, which have an individualized, self-paced approach. Over 1,000, we just topped over 1,000 in just 2 years, kids graduating from those, not only graduating, but having post-secondary options already accepted into a community college or a four-year college or a career and technical center program. So that's some of the approach. I do want to simply quickly say to John Smarelli as well that while the ACT, remember, it's predictive. So just like this thing we're trying to do with teachers, be predictive, doesn't mean a kid with a lower score who's highly motivated and is accepted in. Kids are getting accepted in with lower than the ACT benchmark score won't be successful. Many of them are successful and go on and do quite well. And they'll tell you, I had a poor ACT score. Now I'm the president of my senior class at such and such a college. So we know that. But what we're saying is we still got to get that baseline predictive score up in order for you to be able to select from a better pool.
I see two more hands, and I think that may be all the time that we have, unless you want to stay afterwards and talk with Dr. Cash, Mr. Paget, and then Staley, you had another question. If there are others, let me know, and Martavius, and then we'll kind of round it up.
Ma'am, what percentage of your Gates grant is allotted for professional development? You talked a lot about measuring. You're doing a lot of measuring, and you said it's built around support. So what percentage is allotted towards supporting and improving those teachers in one part? And you really can't fatten a cow on a scale. You can't just measure them forever. Eventually you need to provide some quality food. So I'm wondering what percentage does it recur? And also the paper mentioned that there's this $32 million shortfall that you guys are trying to restructure. And you're talking about doing some creative things with compensation packages. Of that $32 million that you're trying to restructure, is that a tenet of maintaining the grant, or is that a basic tenet on the grant being awarded?
Thank you for those questions. First, on the issue of support and development, professional development, and so forth is a big part of this grant. Do you have a percentage? I know it's strategy 3 for sure, and it's sprinkled into other parts. The measuring part is only strategy 1, really. The other 3 build more towards support, compensation, recognition, and so forth. What percentage, roughly?
So just to be clear, there was no stipulation from the foundation that you must spend X% on this. They understood that the work was iterative. I mean, so first you had to define and measure, then after you did that, you had to develop the strategies for support. And so now that's where you see us now moving into increasing the percentages that are spent, dollars that are spent on increasing the support, the professional development, those types of things. But there was no formula given by them saying it must be allocated a certain percentage or a certain amount. Now I would estimate over half of the funds are shifting towards, remember strategy 3 and 4 both are really about direct teacher support touches, as well as in improving the culture, school culture and climate, which also have indirect teacher support tenets to them.
So if 236 million over the 7 years, that includes the Memphis City Schools contribution, the community contribution, and the Gates contribution, a substantial portion of that is going to be for the support and development strategy 3, 35 probably 35-40%, and then there'll be a large percentage that will be compensation. The compensation in the out years will drive a substantial part of that as well. And then the other question was restructuring the dollars.
Shortfall.
Go ahead.
So just to be clear, the part of the Gates Foundations, they brought a commitment, but they wanted to know that communities and districts were also interested in teacher effectiveness, not just taking their money, depleting it in the end of the work, to the earlier question. And so there's not necessarily a shortfall. We always knew that the district had to contribute a certain amount of funds toward the teacher effectiveness work. And so what that is, it's identifying new revenue sources for those funds. The other unique part to the Memphis plan, other districts said, okay, fund us, that'll be the end of the project, or they'll figure out ways to sustain it. Always in our work, we said we would figure out how to make the work go for 10 years. And so Dr. Cash has talked about for every dollar that the foundation gave, the return on the investment to have the longevity of the project to move forward. So that $32 million is not that, that's at the cutoff of the 7 years, just to run the project for that long. It's the run rate that Dr. Cash mentioned to sustain the work over a longer period of time, even after the Gates Foundation money goes away. And just one other thing, too, that a lot of this work, remember, our country has never done good, measuring effective teaching, prescriptive development and support for teachers. A lot of this work was really about research and development. Most great corporations, most great companies have a whole leg that they're innovating, identifying new ways to be efficient, new ways to do what they do better. And so a part of this work was figuring out how to do some of that research and development, if you will, leg, so that we could then have efficiencies, better strategies that were yielding the type of results that we needed.
Thank you.
Staley.
Can you help us understand, especially those of us new to all this, that in the first presentations that the city and the county, or the old city and all county systems did, they talked about non-teacher employees, and I think there were over 6,000 at the city system. And so I know there are different ways. There's some things outsourced and some not. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts there. But can you kind of help us understand why the non-teacher headcount, per kid and just related to per teacher as well, why that's a lot larger and what the bulk of those people do? And I know you can't do that very briefly, but the best you can, just give us your thoughts on non-teacher.
Well, yeah, again, in a large urban district with the composition of ours, this is not an unusual ratio at all. We have 16,200 employees, part-time, full-time. So when you talk about this early literacy fault line, then right away you're going to know that you're going to need more assistance in the early grades to bring the children up to grade level, up to their literacy and numeracy skills. So you're going to have more assistance, more what we call...
Those would not count in the 7,000 teachers.
Right, no. 7,000 teachers are straight 7,000 teachers. So the other folks are assistants, technology folks, media folks, librarians, counselors, assistant principals, food service workers, transportation employees, on and on and on. There's just a whole host. Secretaries at each building level, and all of the support staff that go into supporting the needs of a fragile overall population.
Since we are kind of by definition having to look at city and county together, even though it may be more relevant looking at other city systems, if you are comparing it to the county, what are the buckets that have the biggest difference, and why? Like maybe on transportation, does one system do things differently, or it may be, what are the main areas where those head?
Well, I don't know what the ratio is in the county. I don't know. I just know what it is for Memphis City Schools, and again, the supports that are given to the children for all of the programming that we provide for them, from arts to music to extracurricular after-school programming, transportation systems, nutrition services systems.
What would be the biggest three?
Custodians. We have a lot more buildings. We have a lot more square footage that we are trying to clean. We've cut down on that considerably. We used to have a legion of custodians, and that was a big issue because it was an employment issue, and a lot of folks, were hired. And Memphis City Schools is the largest employer for a lot of the folks that live in and around the communities in our schools. So that was another big population of support services. So when you add all of those, custodians, transportation, ed assistants, on and on, we're at our most reduced level now. I've cut over 1,400 positions over the last 3 years during all of these budget squeezes. So we think we have a significantly reduced employment population, but ones that are important to serve. As I said, students with speech and language issues, we have a large population. Students who are deaf, students who other districts nearby, including Shelby County, send some of their special populations of students to our system because we have programs for them. It's just a different population. It wouldn't be accurate nor calibrated to look at apple to apple across the two systems without looking at the population and its needs.
I get that. I'm just really trying to go to school here, no bad pun intended. What are the biggest three categories, and how many would be in those three of non-teacher personnel for y'all?
I don't know. I think, as I said, custodians, probably about 1,300. Ed assistants at this point are about 400 to 500. Every school has some support staff. So the support staff at every school, that includes your financial secretary, your lead secretary up front, and your other support staff in technology, media services, and so forth, equates to several, probably 1,000 folks right there.
Martavius, let's do the last question if you could.
Thank you. Dr. Cash, I know that you mentioned that, and we are very aware that Memphis City Schools has its teacher effectiveness measure, our TEM, but in ours is a variant of what the state has prescribed. 50% of it being the student growth and student achievement measures. That's the part that's prescribed by the state that we cannot vary on. Can you talk about how our remaining 50% differs from what the state has prescribed as their measurement instrument?
Sure. We'll do that quickly. Tequila, jump in and I'll find the slide.
So the state's model has just the student growth and student achievement and then observation of practice. The rest of the state is using the TAP model. Memphis is one of 3 districts that are using alternate models, Hamilton County being one and then a consortium using the other. So it's the rubric that's doing the observations, that's being utilized for the observations that's different. The TAP rubric, it's a little more cumbersome. It's what our teachers described it as. Our teachers actually modified a version of the impact rubric. It has 11 indicators, and the teachers actually selected that rubric. They felt like it was more specific and gave them better information on how to improve their practice. That's one difference. So the observation component has a different rubric that it's utilizing. And then the other 2 components, the stakeholder perceptions and the content knowledge, those also are unique to the teacher effectiveness measure model. Again, the rationale was it provides a more holistic picture for teachers in how to perform. Remember, only roughly 35% of teachers even have value-add data. So for those teachers that don't have value-add data across the state, they get assigned their school's composite value-add score. So if I'm a music teacher, I'm questioning how fair that sounds to me, that my 35% of my score is based on the school's composite. Right. These other components provide an opportunity for those teachers that are in those non-tested subjects to have their own direct data to really drive their practice, drive their support, and ultimately their improvement.
I think we'll learn, too, that this, although this model is a little bit different, that both systems are struggling with the new evaluation and the thing that you just mentioned, that not all teachers have the value add, and those are things that we have to understand. Okay, if we could, let's thank this group of individuals that work hard every day.
Thank you. Thank you, staff.
Thank you for coming with us, and this will help us to formulate other questions, and we just appreciate your coming. And if I could, since we're in a meeting, have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. And so be it. Let's adjourn.
You too, my friend.
As committee chair.
I'll see you.